Hi everybody, this is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and we are now live in our Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. And we're going to start off with a few announcements and shout outs, but before we do that, I want to tell you what today's topic is. It is a medium's view of the afterlife, and we've had a lot of requests for this topic. And actually last month we were supposed to have this topic as our Facebook Live, and if you remember way back a month ago, Facebook was down for the day. It feels like forever ago, but it was down for the day, and the energy was so weird and chaotic on Facebook that I decided to go ahead and postpone it. But it actually, I'm going to mess with my necklaces, but it actually has worked out great, because this time of year, end of October, beginning of November, I like to always do something in relation to our ancestors, our loved ones on the other side. So the timing works out perfectly, and thank you all for your patience as we rescheduled from last month. So I always cover a lot in these Facebook Lives. So while we're waiting for everybody to join, I encourage you to make the most out of your time and go grab a pen and paper, grab a cup of tea, container of water, whatever it is that you need to grab, so you can really settle in and be receptive for all of this information. And this class, more than ever, like I like for you guys to ask questions with all of our topics, but today I really want to encourage you to ask questions. If there's anything that I haven't thought of explaining, maybe I just haven't thought of it, but you're really curious about something about the afterlife, then go ahead and ask. And I have about an hour that we can chat here before I go on to my other class. So on Mondays, right after this, I have a little bit of extra wiggle room, and then I have a psychic protection discussion group on Zoom, and that is tonight. And it's a paid donation-based group that we have on a temporary basis. So I don't know how long we're gonna have it. We're just gonna keep doing it for a while until we're not doing it anymore. And the topic for that class, in case you're wondering, is all about secondary psychic attack. So when other people are influenced, nudged, interfered with to mess with you. And because it's a discussion group, it's not going to be me lecturing and teaching. It is a discussion where everyone has a chance to share their stories, and along with my guidance of our topic. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and shoot me a Facebook message, or you can email me at oasis@mayazahira.com, oasis@mayazahira.com. And okay, so I always do our announcements at the beginning. That way, when everyone's joining, we have it all done with. So as you're joining, go ahead and share where you're joining from, so I can say hi to you. I know some of you have really been looking forward to this class. And while we're waiting for the Facebook people to finish joining live, I want to just give a shout out to everybody on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and there's a ton of free videos on there. So all of you Facebook people, if you're not on there yet, get on there and click subscribe. But I want to say hi to my YouTube people and just give a loving reminder that the energy of a Facebook Live is different than like a polished video that some of you are used to on YouTube. And I intentionally don't edit my videos. So just so you know, because I get a fair amount of people like giving feedback about that, and that's cool. That's totally fine. But I want you to know that that's intentional. My goal is to get the information out there, to help more people, rather than spending hours and hours behind a computer editing, which doesn't really help anyone. So that's my vantage point on that. So if you are a YouTuber, then please be patient with the fact that we're going to be chit-chatting and just having some fun in here. So I'm going to switch my focus now and say hi to all of our Facebook people. Go ahead and tell us where you're joining from. And do you have a question about what it's like on the other side? Okay. I can't wait to get into our topic today. It's so interesting. Oh my goodness. We have 11 people. That's great. Yay. All right. So, a couple more announcements before we jump into our topic. So if you are watching this replay on YouTube and you don't know about the Facebook group, I invite you to join the Facebook group called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. Okay, it's the group. There's a page too. That's just like kind of a info placeholder, but you want to join the group. That's what's more interactive. Okay. And you have to join, you have to answer the 3 questions in order to join. We have an amazing group of people in our free Facebook group, but I intentionally create a filter so that we don't have any trolls or like people who are surveilling or doing other weird things. Like only people with real Facebook profiles who take the time to answer the 3 questions are allowed to join. So if you just want to click and be a troll or just be like watching watching what's going on and not participating, then the group probably isn't for you. So you do need to answer the 3 questions. We do need to know that you're a real person before you join. It's an awesome group. So we have Hamad saying hello all. Stephanie is joining us from Phoenix. Very good. Okay, I think I have another announcement. What is it? Oh. Okay. So this channel and Facebook group is all about psychic protection. Oh my gosh. Hi, Christine. Yay. One of my colleagues is on here. I'm going to start crying. I love you. So this channel is all about psychic protection and about being empowered and informed about what's going on around you so that you can do something about it if necessary, and not just put your head in the sand. So we do talk a lot about some pretty serious topics in here, and that's why today's topic is so nice. It's very like inspiring and like fun, and hopefully comforting for those of you who've lost loved ones. We also have a hello from Nicole, a hello from Wes. Hi, Wes. Good to see you. Christine says, I love you too, girly. Always a huge fan. Yay. Thanks. So those of you who want to go deeper before we get into today's topic, which we're going to do in like 1 minute now. If you want to go deeper, then here's this book that you can get on Amazon. See how much I've used it. It's all dog-eared. Darkness Disguised as Light. This is my introduction to how I got started in the field of psychic protection. I'm right now working on my 2nd book. I can't wait. Oh my gosh, because it's going to be like a powerhouse times 10 compared to my 1st book. But if you want to learn more, you can read the 1st book. It's definitely a good start. And then if you want to go deeper, and like if you're having psychic protection issues, or if you're just somebody who wants to learn how to develop your psychic skills so that you can connect with the other side like I do, then I encourage you to go to my website and check out my online program. That's my #1 thing that I spend almost all my work time doing, all my playtime doing. And the website is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And the program is Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And you'll find that all over my website. Okay. And in fact, we do so much cool stuff in there in the paid academy. Last month, one of the bonus things that we did on top of all of our usual content was that I did a demo, a step-by-step demo of how to make my special, like super powerful exorcism strength, energy clearing, incense powder. Okay, I have a special recipe that I've just created over the years of things that I like to use. And I want to show you guys, I actually went to Home Goods yesterday. No, 2 days ago. And I found this it's big mortar and pestle for $15. And if you have a Home Goods near you and you like to use herbs or resins for protection or for manifestation, Home Goods has these for super cheap, and it's so big. And the one that I used in my demo was a normal size, like small soapstone one. And so it was really hard to make a large amount of my concoction. But we learn all sorts of tools in the academy. So that's where you would want to go if you want the how-to, because the free content that I put out is we cover a lot of in our free content, but it's very intentionally all about like how these things work and why, and then what to do about it is in the paid program. Okay. All right. Spiritual Empowerment Academy at psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Okay. Now, finally, for our topic, a medium's view of the afterlife. Dina, Jamie, okay. Rose is saying hi. Christy says that it's beautiful. So once again, my comments are a little bit wonky today. Sahela says hi, everyone. So I'm gonna have to stay on top of comments that because it's when I scroll back, it gets all wonky and it scrolls way back to the beginning of the comments, and it's not going in and it's not being friendly. So even if I'm in the middle of talking about something, I'm going to go ahead and just read. I'm going to catch the comments as they come through. That way I won't miss them. So remember, if you have any questions about the afterlife, then I encourage you to ask, and I will write it down, and we will be sure to cover it if possible. Also, one thing that pops into my head is most of you who've been joining my Facebook Lives for a while know that I don't do free readings. If I ever do free readings, it is a very special deal. Like, because I usually don't. That's usually reserved only for the members of my Spiritual Empowerment Academy. They have readings at least once, sometimes twice a month. So they get a lot of access to complimentary readings. In the free Facebook Lives, it's all about information. Okay? Noah is saying, hello, Maya and everyone. Can't wait to watch the replay. Yay. Awesome. Sahela, love all of your pretty blue. Yeah, there's a lot of blue today. The backdrop and my clothes and everything. All right. So today is a medium's view of the afterlife. So let's talk about what that means. So a medium, that's describing me. A medium is someone who is intuitive / psychic, who is really tuned in, who specifically has the ability to connect with those on the other side and those in the non-physical realms. So technically, a medium can be someone who can connect with your spirit guides, your angels, even connecting with or tuning into anything negative that might be affecting you. But most people think of a medium as somebody who can connect with your loved ones, the human souls that are on the other side, in heaven, so to speak. I use the term the afterlife rather than heaven, That's just my personal preference because it's a non-religious term, and I recognize that we have people of all different spectrums and faiths on here, and so I specifically use the term afterlife. It's also the term that I'm more comfortable with as well. I think it's a little broader than the term heaven, which might only like it seems like it's the heaven concept is kind of in the Christianity box, and that if there's anything that I'm seeing that's outside of that box, it doesn't really it doesn't jive. So afterlife is what I'm going to be using today, but you can use whatever term that you want to. Okay, so before we dive into what I see on the other side, I think it's always important to know a little bit about who you're getting the information from, rather than just believing anything that anyone says. So I think it's important for you to know, like, how do I know what I know? Where am I getting this information from? Did I read it in a book? Did I take a workshop about it? Did a teacher teach me about it? And all of that is no. This is from direct experience. Okay. Now, some people have a strong connection with the afterlife because they have had a near-death experience. And a near-death experience, and by the way, I personally, fingers crossed, have not had a near-death experience in this lifetime. I say fingers crossed because that's kind of a challenging thing to go through, and I don't wish that challenge for myself. But let me go back and explain what a near-death experience is. It is a situation where a person has died, or so they've like literally clinically died, or they may have almost died. So by clinically died, I mean, according to the doctors and whatever is hooked up to the person, they are dead. Okay. And then a few minutes later, they actually, the doctors are able to revive the person, or maybe the doctors aren't able to revive the person, but the person just revives themselves. So that's one instance. The other instance is like clinically the person isn't dead. There's still maybe a heart rate or a pulse or something, but the person's soul still leaves their body and kind of jumps the gun, goes over to the other side. And usually that's because there is some kind of an accident or physical trauma or an illness, similar to the first example that I just gave. But it can also be like any other kind of trauma, like an emotional trauma. Something major has just happened and you pop out of your body and you like completely leave. And so you have a near-death experience because you've completely left your body and you've gone over to the other side or to the entrance of the other side, which I'll talk about. And so there are tons of stories about this. You can read about it by Googling near-death experiences. I was always fascinated with this topic, even when I was in high school, way back in the 90s. In my high school library, they didn't have a metaphysical or a spiritual section, like, at all. Like they did have a section, but it had like 4 books. It was so tiny. But I was very much a spiritual seeker even when I was in high school. And I went over to that section. I was like, what's over here? And there were like four or five books. There was hardly anything. But one of the books was a book by Raymond A. Moody called Life After Life. And it was his studies about near-death experiences. So I bring up near-death experiences because a lot of people have stories about what they saw and what they experienced on the other side because they had a near-death experience. And there are actually a lot of people in the world who have become mediums who that ability has opened up for them literally because they had a near-death experience that opened up those channels for them. So is there anybody in here who's had a past life, sorry, not a past life, a near-death, totally different thing, a near-death experience? Go ahead and give me a thumbs up or a heart if you've had a near-death experience like what I've just described. Okay. So now, even though I personally haven't had a near-death experience, I was thinking about, why am I tuned in more than some people to the other side? And I think it's because even when I was young, I had memories of the other side. And let me mess with my device for a second here. Sometimes I have to reset it. I had memories of the other side, and I'm not going to go into all of the memories and the stories and everything, but I still, my entire life, I've remembered that when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was sitting in church with my mom, and I had this flashback, and I completely remembered like all sorts of stuff from between lives, not past lives, which is a whole other thing I have memories of, but like of being on the other side and choosing my parents and all sorts of stuff. So I think maybe that's why I have a strong connection with the other side. And by the way, as usual, I always have to look at my notes because I have a lot to cover here. So when I do mediumship readings for clients, I have a gift for being able to see certain things. And I'm going to explain this because every medium is different, and you might go and have a mediumship reading with someone who has a different style, and they're able to see or perceive different things than I'm able to. And in my humble opinion, I think it is all of value. It's all truly of value. So I don't worry about the fact that there's like a couple of things that I don't typically get. Like I personally don't typically get names in any of my readings. And I think that's because I can't even remember names in regular life. And I've noticed with my colleagues that if there's something that we are weak in our regular life, we tend to be weak in that in our psychic skills, and vice versa. Like I'm very good with time, with being on time and managing my time, and I can see timelines. When I do psychic readings, I can see timelines. I can map out all sorts of things that are really complex. Like I can see it all. And a lot of psychics that I know don't do that. So in other words, I don't worry about the fact that I don't usually get names. Like we all have our skill sets, right? So I don't typically get names, and I also don't typically, well, I'll just put it this way. I usually joke to people that when I do mediumship readings, I can't tell you where Aunt Millie is hiding the secret papers, where she's hiding the secret papers. I can't tell you that. I don't usually get that kind of information. I usually get information about the other side, okay? About what they're doing on the other side, about what their passing was like, and what kinds of beings were around them as soon as they passed over and started to make their journey to the afterlife, how they were feeling, how they're feeling now, what they're doing now on the other side. Let's say they passed away 5 years ago. Well, what they were doing then is different than what they're doing now. If they have something that they're involved with on the other side, or do they have some kind of work that they're doing? And that's pretty common. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. If there's anything that we should be concerned about, are they doing okay? Like that's what a lot of people want to know. Are they doing okay? Are they at peace? Are they suffering? Did they suffer when they first left their body? And those are all the kinds of things that I can see. or that I can perceive, because I'm a clairvoyant. I can see images and visual information. I'm clairaudient. I can hear things, but oftentimes in mediumship sessions, that's not typically how the information comes through. Although it also depends on the human that I'm connecting with. If they are a strongly verbal person, then they will come through as verbal, like I will hear them. Okay. But the strongest way that I get information is through empath information. So the soul that I'm connecting with will help me to feel a certain way. They will have me feel how they felt when they were passing. I'll feel the emotions or the physical sensations. Okay. And so there's a combination of the different skill sets that I have, and that blends with whatever that loved one's strengths or skills are. Like if they haven't learned yet how to connect with physical people, it's going to be harder for them to connect with me, as opposed to a soul that's had a chance to get their bearings and figure out how to connect. Okay, so I'm kind of hopping around a little bit. I want to say one other thing, and it's that even though our loved ones are on the other side, they still have free will. So they can decide whether they want to talk to me or not. If during their life they were really afraid of this sort of thing, they might be very hesitant to connect with somebody like me. Or if they were shy around strangers, I notice sometimes I'll get the feeling from the person that, oh, they don't know me, they don't trust me, they don't really want to open up to me. So as the client's advocate, I'll start to shift on the person's guardian angels to get messages from them instead. So there's always like backdoor methods that I can use. But on the contrary, if the person is very extroverted, or if they're very trusting, or they're very open to these kinds of spiritual connections, or they're very, very eager to connect with the client, then the messages will come through like so easily. Unless the client is totally a non-believer, and then the client can block the energy. So there's just a lot of factors, right? So it's not all like, I can't force a human soul to connect with me, but 99% of the time there's a really good connection. In my opinion, there's a really good connection, and we get a lot of information, which I'm going to tell you about today. And Stephanie is saying hi. Different Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Okay, I want to go back to my notes because I know as I was talking, there were probably some things that I left out. So, give me a second. Okay, so I might repeat some information here, but when I do readings, I'm able to see what your loved one is doing, who they are with, and even what their passing was like, also what they're feeling right now. It's usually visual, knowing, and feeling with a little bit of auditory. And, okay, so now we're going to get into the real stuff. We're going to talk about what it is that I see. I do want to let you know, if there are some of you listening to this who are like, oh my God, I really want Maya to tune into my loved one. There's two ways that you can get a reading. And the first is if you live in the Tucson area, which is where I live right now. If you live in Tucson, I am at the Tucson Metaphysics Fair every month, and you can find that information on my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And the only other way that you can get a reading is if you're a member of Spiritual Empowerment Academy, because a year ago I stopped doing readings for the public because I had a really good problem. It was that I was so busy. Like, I wasn't even getting to sleep. Like I was doing readings at like 1 a.m. And it just was not healthy. It just wasn't healthy. So now only readings are available for students in the program at this time. Okay, so now I talked about how I know what I know. Let's talk about the process of dying. So these are all things that I see through many readings that I've done for clients. And it's interesting that even though I was reading books about near-death experiences and the information about the other side, about the afterlife, I'm a questioner. I'm a seeker. So I never assumed that just because it says something in a certain book that it's going to be that way on the other side. So what I'm going to tell you is what I've experienced and what I've seen firsthand as the medium reader. And I'm still a questioner. So I applaud anyone watching this who is a questioner, who's questioning the afterlife and like, is it really like that? So I think that's a good trait to have, and I'm going to circle back around to that in a little bit. Okay, so the dying process. All right. So first I want to acknowledge, I know I'm going to be kind of bouncing around because there's so much to cover and kind of some complicated things to explain. Okay. So I want to explain that once a person is out of their physical body, they are experiencing reality in a completely different way. And when you're in the spiritual realm and on the other side, the whole sense of reality is different, and time is not linear. That's super important to understand. So in our physical reality, we have linear time. We have the present, we have the past, we have the future. So it always gets really interesting when from my vantage point as a living physical human in linear time, I guess it's good that I have such a good grasp and ability with timing in psychic readings, because it's like I'm looking over to the other side where there is not linear time, and then I'm describing to the client in terms of linear time what's happening over there so that the client can understand. So just remember that there is not linear time over there. Like everything is happening at once. So yes, in some sense, there is a step-by-step process that happens with their passing away, with their death process. Yes, there is a step-by-step process that's occurring, but that's from our vantage point as humans who understand things from linear time. Because the reality is that on the other side, there is no linear time and everything is basically happening at once. And it's hard for our little human pea brains to understand, to like grasp that. So for sake of simplicity, I am going to describe things in a linear way, but that's not how it's actually experienced by those who are on the other side. I haven't personally experienced it, but it's very unique. Okay, so actually I forgot to mention, and I'm glad I have my notes, before we get into the death process, I want to talk about pre-death. And so if, let's say, a person is like in the process of dying, let's say it's not a sudden death, let's say it's not an accident, but they're dying of an illness, and so it's or old age, and it's a process that's taking a few days or a few weeks. And in that time, it's very common for the person who's in the process of dying to have loved ones from the other side appear in their room. And the person who's dying is the one who can see them, and typically the other alive family members cannot see the spirits that are in the room, unless they're a medium or psychic. And again, not always. Okay, but usually the person who's in the process of dying can see or hear these loved ones. And the reason why, even if they weren't psychic in their life, the reason why they can perceive this is because they're literally between two worlds. Like they have one foot in the other world and one foot still over here. So they're able to see like either loved ones, pets. Sometimes they will even see a tunnel of light, or they'll see a light, or they'll feel feelings of warmth and comfort even before they've passed. Okay. So if you are with a loved one who's actively dying and they're saying like, oh, my mother is here, and their mother died 40 years ago, yes, there are some doctors and nurses, medical professionals who will say that it's just imagination, or it's just the brain misfiring. But I mean, I suppose that's possible, but I personally believe that they are actually seeing their loved ones. Now, I suppose it depends on a case-by-case basis, because if someone is heavily medicated, who knows what's going on, right? But it is a very common occurrence. Okay, now on to the death process. At death, the person will lift up, their soul will lift up out of their body, and it's typically a very effortless. Now the physical body may be experiencing a lot of effort and discomfort. That might be the case, but the soul will lift up out of the body in a very effortless way. It's like, oh, like a cloud, it just lifts up. And they might see the hospital room, or they might immediately, or the area where they've passed away, wherever that is, or they might just immediately be shifting over to the more spiritual realm. Yeah. And you guys remember, you guys are listening so intently. Feel free to comment, ask questions, etc. Okay. Okay. And think about, have you ever been with someone while they were in the death process? Did you perceive anything when they died? And don't feel bad if you didn't, because sometimes when we're in grief can sometimes block the ability to perceive those things. So, but I notice a lot of people will beat themselves up over not being able to perceive something, but that's why grief will block that. But if you have had an experience, go ahead and share it with us. Keep it to a couple of sentences. As much as I would like to hear all of your comments, it's hard when it's in text to read really long paragraphs on my device. Okay, Jessica says, I'm here. Okay, I'm glad you were able to make it. Awesome. Stephanie M, I felt my dying dog's spirit lift out of his body, then felt a strong pull up on the top of my head. Oh, that makes me want to cry. Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you for sharing that. Wes, my grandfather was bedridden for years and couldn't move anything other than his face and hands. When he died, he sat up straight in bed, took a deep breath, and laid down and died. You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, Wes. It's very common that before someone dies, either in the moment or the hour, or maybe even the days before they die, they will seem to suddenly improve. Like they might be in a coma or completely out of it. And then all of a sudden they're awake and they're eating and they're talking, and people will think, oh, they're better. And actually it's a pre-death. It's a very common pre-death thing that happens. So keep that in mind, everybody. All right. So Wes is saying, I have noticed this too. Yeah. So when the person lifts up out of their body, then they will often be met by benevolent beings. Now I'm going to stop for a second and explain that every single passing is different. I've done so many different readings, and I have not seen a single one that's exactly the same. So these are typical patterns, but does this mean that each of these things that I describe will happen to everybody in that way? No, everybody's different. Okay. Stephanie says, my grandfather improved a day or two before death. Yeah. So as soon as the person leaves their body, they will be met by loved ones, guardian angels, deceased pets, and just any kind of support crew. Okay. It could be ancestors. And from my observation as a medium, there can be a different number and different types of beings for each person. Everyone is unique. So for some people, I will just see their guardian angels. Some people, I won't see their guardian angels, join them right after death. They might be further off in the distance, and it's all of their ancestors and their loved ones that are gathered around them. I might see like a whole crowd of loved ones, or I might see just one. And there's no right or wrong. It's like just literally whatever the person needs. That's what the focus is what does the person need to help with their transition. Okay. Often, but not always, the person will see a tunnel of light, or either a big light or a tunnel of light. And in scientific terms, we can call this a wormhole into other dimensions beyond the earth plane. Okay. Wes is saying, is this due to the pineal gland being the avenue for the soul to disembark from the body? Well, there's a lot of theories on that. I try not to give definitive answers unless I feel that I know the definitive answer. So I'm going to say that is surely possible. Okay. That is something I'm questioning as well. Now, so the tunnel of light, I've actually seen people who've just died moving through the tunnel of light with their loved ones. So they're literally going on the journey with their team, whether it's a couple of beings or several, and they're moving on to the other side. Now, I want to stop for a second again, since I know, especially on my YouTube channel, we have a lot of really awesome people who are questioners and seekers of truth, which I am as well. So I want to just take a moment right now, since we were just talking about the tunnel of light, to mention that there are some theories about the tunnel of light saying that it's not a good thing, that the tunnel of light is a deception. And I want for most of this class today to be very uplifting, and I don't want us to go down too many rabbit holes. It can be too confusing. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because I know there'll be people watching who are like, but wait, I thought because you might have heard other psychic protection channels videos talking about that, how the tunnel of light might be a deception. Here's what I'll say. I've been in a deep questioning process over that since 2016. There were some things that I went through that caused me to go to dive down a whole bunch of rabbit holes. And then I've continued to do mediumship readings, and I continue to see and feel all of these experiences. Okay. And so my current viewpoint is that it is possible for somebody to get hijacked or taken to the wrong place or shown something that's not real when they pass. I think that that is possible. However, the journeys that I've been seeing, I think are genuine. Okay. So I will also be really clear that I'm still continuously seeking and asking questions. But it's been really interesting to have encountered the information back in 2016, and I continue to encounter it with some of the YouTube channels that I follow and listen to their perspectives about how the tunnel of light is a false light deception. And I listen to all the information because I'm an open-minded questioner. But I just have to say that through all of these years, like I just do reading after reading after reading where I see and feel and know these scenarios that in my firsthand experience are very genuine. Okay, so can someone be deceived or hijacked? Yes, in the spiritual realm, hijacking can occur, but in my experience so far, the tunnel of light and that whole traveling to the other side experience actually looks very benevolent. Okay, so if you're a seeker like me, then follow along, and I'm going to tell you what else I see. Okay. Yeah, Rose is saying, Maya, I love your honesty. Yeah, I seriously thrive on the questioning process. And if there's something that I'm still questioning, I will tell you. And if there's something I am like absolutely sure of, I will tell you. And on that note, I hear people talking about certain deceptions, including the tunnel of light. There's also ideas out there that like every single entity out there is false light. There's all sorts of ideas out there, and being the questioner that I am, I'm listening to their video and I'm like, yeah, but how do they know that? They're saying it with authority, and how do they know that? Have they, like, are they a medium? Have they had a near-death experience themselves where they have had that firsthand experience? Or is this just something that someone else, because I see a lot of this with the truther movement where they've heard about it from somewhere and therefore it kind of gloms onto them and then they just take it on as truth. And as an extreme questioner that I am, I question that. So, so I question the truthers. I question the those who are conservative, who are like more fundamentalist, who don't question at all. I question everything. Okay, so the tunnel of light, I've seen it like so many times. Now we're going to take a second and talk about earthbound spirits, because that's important too. Karen says, can you address reincarnation and how it works with an afterlife world? Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to make a note. Is there a body that always stays connected to this one life that lives in the spirit world? Okay. Oh, that's a tough question, Karen. I love that you asked it. And I'm going to say, I probably can't answer it to the level that I would like to. I am still figuring that one out. And what I'm speaking of today are the things that I have seen over and over and over again. But I too have had that question, like, how is it that I can see these ancestors, these loved ones on the other side? And yet, well, if reincarnation exists, then, and they're moving on to other lifetimes, then how does that all work, right? So there are different theories that I could touch on. And one is that, well, if the other side is non-linear time. There is no linear time. What's actually, now, let's see if we can grasp this and not have our minds blown. Actually, from the vantage point of the other side, you are living all of your lifetimes all at once. And all aspects of you are on the other side. Okay. Okay. There are other theories, and one is that there are different parts to our soul, and there are parts that split off and that go to the afterlife, the other side, and there are parts that reincarnate there. And I don't know what I think of that theory because I haven't seen it. Like, I tend to speak with authority over things that I've seen or experienced, and I've read about it, but I haven't experienced it, right? But it's an idea that's in some shamanic belief systems, okay? So, do we have a definitive answer to that? No, but as someone who can see timelines spiritually very easily, I find it very fascinating that when I'm connecting with the other side, and then I can see that like all of the lifetimes are happening all at once, and then it gets super complicated. It gets very complicated, but that's one answer to that. I love that you asked that, and it's a really good question. Okay, so tunnel of light. Okay, earthbound spirits. Occasionally, when someone dies, their spirit will not move on to the other side, and then they will become an earthbound spirit. There are reasons why this might happen. The person might not realize that they died. You're welcome, Karen. The person might not realize that they died because they were in a sudden accident, and it just happened so quickly that they're just kind of in a fog spiritually. They might be afraid of the afterlife because maybe they did really bad things, or they think that they did really bad things, or maybe there's someone on the other side who was abusive to them and they're afraid to go on to the afterlife because they think that person will be over there and harass them. Or maybe they're afraid of hell, or there's like some agenda, reason why they want to stay, to have their murder solved or the crime solved, or for some other agenda. Revenge is one agenda. So yes, a person's guardian angels, they do have to allow free will. And so a person can choose to stay on the earth plane. And that's why we have, that's one of the reasons why we have areas that have ghost activity, souls that are trapped. And it's a very unfortunate thing. But there is something that you can do. When your loved one dies, you can pray for them. Or if you don't like the word prayer, you can send Reiki to them. You can send them positive energy. You can ask, set intentions, light a candle, ask for their angels to guide them safely over to the other side. And I truly believe that our prayers and intentions really do help those on the other side. Like if they're stuck or struggling in some way, I do think it gives them a boost. It really does. And it's perfect timing to bring this up because it is November 1st today, and it's All Souls Day, and Day of the Dead, etc. So we honor our ancestors. And so no matter how long it's been since they've passed, you can send them energy, send them benevolent thoughts, etc. And then there are mediums and healers who also specialize in helping souls to go over to the other side. I want to bring up something else. I was raised Catholic. I'm no longer a practicing Catholic. I'm not inside any kind of box, but I have that history in my upbringing of being raised Catholic. And there was a concept in Catholicism called purgatory. And purgatory is the in-between, where it's in between heaven and it's in between hell. Now, I'm going to talk about heaven and hell in just a minute, because that's not actually what I see. I don't see these two separate layers. I see more of a hierarchy of different vibrational dimensions. But I had this really interesting experience where when my father passed, for, I don't know, like 10 years, whenever I tuned into him, he just looked gray. He did not look like a loved one. He didn't look like a spirit usually looks like when they've gone over to the other side. He just looked all grayed out and kind of lost. But whenever I tuned in, what I got was he wasn't actually stuck on the earth plane. And it wasn't until a couple years ago when all of a sudden I started to see images of him looking fine with my mother, who was his wife. And suddenly it clicked. I was like, oh, I do think that we can tend to create aspects of what we believe in when we go to the other side. A lot of people who've experienced near-death experiences and have come back to talk about it have shared the fact that they can manifest and create like whatever their mind visualizes. And I really think that because my dad was such a believer in Catholicism, and he truly believed that when you die, according to his belief system, he believed that when you die, there's a period of time that you are in purgatory in order to atone for any of the smaller sins that you committed when you were alive, and then you're allowed to go to heaven. And that's literally what I saw. Like, I think that's why he was all grayed out, was because he put himself into purgatory until he felt that he was like deserving, according to his belief, that he was deserving. And then he went to, quote, heaven, and he was with my mom again. That was very fascinating. So I do think that people do create some aspects of the afterlife based on what their beliefs are. Okay. So like if a person believes that it's going to be really scary and horrible, then they might create that. Or if they believe in purgatory, they might create that. If they believe in a certain deity, then that's who they're going to meet on the other side. Okay. All right. So Stephanie says, so if my parents passed a long time ago, I can still send them Reiki and it helps them. Yes, I truly believe that. I can say that with authority. I do believe that. Because also remember, they don't have linear time on the other side. So it might seem like a long time to you, but you can send them energy anytime and it will help them. Okay. So we talked about the tunnel of light. Now let's talk about the life review. So typically they will travel through this wormhole. That's what I think it is. I think the tunnel of light is an interdimensional wormhole. That's what my weird brain believes. Into another dimension. Once they travel to the other side, then it's very typical for a person to have a life review. And I see this a lot when I'm tuning in to loved ones on the other side and I see what their process was like. I very often will see them going through a life review. And the life review is when they are shown all of their entire life, but in a way that's beyond what our human brain could understand. Like, it's a multi-dimensional experiential review of their life, where they get to see and feel and experience everything, but not just that, but how every single one of their actions impacted everyone else. And so it's like literally multi-dimensional. It's like multi-layered. Contrary to some religious teachings, I have never seen a past life review where someone was being guilted or shamed about mistakes that they made. I've never once ever seen that. Okay? What I always see is that the person is learning and growing and having aha moments like, oh, now I understand. And that the beings that are around them, their guardian angels and etc., are very benevolent helpers. And again, at this point, the goal is not only to support them and help them in their transition, but also to help them to understand what happened in their lifetime. Okay, so once they've completed their life review, oh, and by the way, again, recognizing that we have no linear time on the other side, but from my perspective, the life review is sometimes very quick for some people, and it sometimes takes quite a while. Okay. And then from there, from the life review, then they will go on to a variety of other things. There are some normal things that I often see souls doing on the other side. But first, I'm going to talk about the things that are less common that I see. So after they've had the life review, sometimes they are placed in a healing chamber. And I call it a healing chamber. Like it looks like it's a cordoned off area, or like an egg-shaped chamber where the soul is just resting and healing. And this can happen because of psychological challenges in their lifetime, physical challenges, suffering, trauma. Maybe the death was really difficult. But like I said, everybody is unique, because I've seen loved ones who had an extraordinarily difficult death, but they shifted out of it so quickly. As soon as they left their body, they didn't need to be in a healing chamber. They were good. They were like great, ready to move on. And others that had to spend quite a while in a very gentle environment before they went on to do other things. So I've seen what I'll call healing chambers, like an individual pod. I've seen that quite a few times, but it's different than the norm, right? Which I'll talk about in a second. I've also seen individuals be put into like a separation chamber, and this is this is less common, way less common. And it's with, if the person was extremely troubled, especially psychologically, and they might be causing harm to others, then I will see a separation chamber, especially if it's a soul that has really aligned with darkness. Rather than seeing them like going to a burning place of hell, I will see them in a healing chamber or a separation chamber. That's what I see. And then I will also see a soul. I will see different souls having different lengths of time, so to speak, of acclimating to the other side. There are some souls that I've seen that have died young. Their physical body died young, and so they had a period of time, whether it was a few days, a few weeks, a few months, according to Earth time, where they had a lot of loved ones and angels around them, just helping them like mentally and emotionally accept the fact that they had passed away. But again, I've seen others who were young who the second they pass over, they're good. They're like, hey, I'm doing great. Like, I don't need any acclimation period. Like, I'm awesome already. So everybody's unique. I think there was something else I was going to say on this. Okay, make a note. Okay, so the next thing that I'll talk about are the more normal, I'll call them normal things that I see happening in the afterlife. So the things that are a little bit different are the healing chamber, separation chamber, a time period of acclimation, those, especially for those who had a difficult life or death. But what's more typical is that that's not needed. The healing chamber and the acclimation period is not needed, and the person just goes right into adjusting to being on the other side. And there are a variety of activities that they might take part in. Hey, Nora, good to see you. So before I talk about the activities, I'm going to talk about the dimensional layers because I haven't talked about this yet. So what I see is that on the other side, there are these different layers of reality. It's like different, let's see how to put this in words. Like if we were to imagine it in a like a hierarchical sort of way, where down here we have the lower level of the afterlife, and this is at a lower vibration, and then as we go up, it's a higher vibration, and the higher that you go, the closer to divine source that you are, and the higher that you go, the less involved you are with earth matters, the less likely you are to go back and visit your loved ones, because you are, like, in certain terms, you're further away. Again, there is no distance on the other side, but it's the only way that I can describe it, is that they are a lot further away when they're up here. And this, if someone is way up here, that would be considered ascended. Like their soul is ascended. And that's very uncommon. But usually when someone passes away, they will experience a certain amount of healing to where they will pop up like a certain level, a few levels in their consciousness when they pass over to the other side. But like my mother, for example, she is better than she was when she was alive. She had serious mental health issues, but she's, even on the other side, she still doesn't honor boundaries. Like, she still calls me by the name that she wants to call me instead of the name that I ask people to call me, because that's her, right? But she's a lot better, but she's not suddenly like angelic and all like perfect, right? And we need to understand that. So they usually will up level a little bit. Sometimes they will up level a lot. I did a couple of readings a couple weeks ago, and for this one woman, I tuned into one relative who up-leveled the typical amount just a little bit when he passed away. But her mother, when her mother passed away, her mother shot way up and was like way ascended soul, ascended spirit. So when we're looking at the different activities that our loved ones might be doing on the other side, keep this hierarchy in mind, because the lower levels, it's not hell that's the lower levels. I'm not even talking about that. But at the lower vibrations, there are people who are working through more dramas and more stuff. And as you move up, even when you're still in the lower levels, but a little bit further up, the experiences that they will be having on the other side will be earth-like. For example, they might be reliving their favorite place or their favorite activities that they enjoyed when they were on Earth. And so it's going to have a lot more similarities to the Earth plane, although it will look like energy. Like it doesn't look it's not solid like it is here, but it definitely is like a facsimile of Earth experiences. Okay, but as you go up these levels, then it's less and less and less like the physical realm, and everything looks more and more and more like energy, to where you get at these really high up levels. It's pure energy, and the human soul isn't even going to appear as their human looking self. They're going to be existing as pure energy, and that's how they're going to look as well. Okay. I know these are kind of complicated things. I hope I'm explaining it in a way that makes sense. So, different things that they might do on the other side. Every loved one that I've looked at has been unique, and it's always so interesting because I worked with a client whose relative, I found out later, loved to build things, was like an architect or something, just loved to work with his hands. Now, I did not know this at the beginning of the reading. What I knew was that he was showing me that he had very special work on the other side that he was very proud of. And he was working on like literally building the energetic constructs of the universe, of like reality. For, I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. So he was working with energy, but he was building, but on an energetic level. And I just remember he was so proud of this work. And I kept talking about how he was building things on the other side. And she was like, oh, that makes sense, because he was always building things when he was alive. So they might have any number of jobs on the other side. Like this one person was a builder. Some might be going to school. And when I see people going to school, it can be in a group setting, or they're doing individual learning, studying. There are a lot of loved ones that I see who are just relaxing or who are having fun. They might be doing fun things that they enjoyed doing in this lifetime, or they might be doing things that they didn't feel brave enough to do in this lifetime. Like, I worked with a client who, her parents, I think I recall, her parents never really traveled or left home. They were very much homebodies. But when I saw them on the other side, they were traveling all over the place. They were every which way, having fun traveling. And it's like they were finally out of their bubble, so they could do that. Okay, types of work. Yeah, so, there's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and that is that in addition to all the different activities they might be doing on the other side, some of them will come and visit you. Now, it totally depends on their choice, whether they're busy on the other side. Sometimes they are just very, very aligned with whatever their work is or their experience is on the other side. So they might think about you or wonder how you're doing or check in more like in a mental way, but they stay pretty much always on the other side. Whereas some of our loved ones will come and visit us very, very often. And it's different from soul to soul. And it also depends on, even though they have free will on the other side, there are also other authorities, like their angels, and there's a bigger agenda, a bigger authority there. So like a soul can't just do whatever the heck they want to do. Like maybe they are being asked to stay on the other side and focus on whatever it is that they're supposed to be focusing on, so that they can move on, and that's what their angels are asking them to do. Okay. So when I see loved ones visiting, they might visit just every once in a while when there's a difficult situation going on, or they might visit on your birthday. They might visit on special occasions. They might visit on a regular basis, like once a week. And every once in a while, I will see a loved one who is assigned as the person's spirit guide. A lot of people just assume that, oh, my grandmother passed away, she's my spirit guide now. They might love you so, so much, but honestly, they're probably busy doing other things on the other side, and they love you and they're going to come and visit you, but chances are they're not officially your spirit guide. I define a spirit guide as someone who's with you pretty much all the time, and they have a very specific role to help you all the way through to the end of your life. Okay? So every once in a while, they will take the role of spirit guide, and that means that they are not spending very much time on the other side. They're spending most of their time with you. Okay, we have like 2 minutes for questions because I went over because there was a lot to cover. So while I'm waiting for questions, and I might not be able to answer all of them, but we'll see what comes through. Christy, I made a note in my notes here that you talked about how your grandma, when she passed on, I think she showed up and she was smoking cigarettes or something. And that's a great example of how even when they pass over to the other side, they can still have a lot of their habits and their quirks that they had when they were living. So again, they don't go from like dying and then all of a sudden they're like ascended angels or something. A lot of times they still have their habits, and that could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be cussing or whatever, and they still have free will, and so they might still be engaging in that. Oh, Christy says she will be mad at me for saying it though. Oh, I'm sorry, Grandma. Sending you lots of love. Send her some extra love today. Okay, so we had a question from Kelly. I don't think Kelly's on here today, and it's a question about our ancestors being hijacked, and I think that, like, if there's some kind of spiritual protection issue going on, I think we're going to address that in our Spiritual Empowerment Academy, because that's going a little bit deeper. So Kelly, if you listen to this, you can ask again, and we'll cover it in our Q&A. But I didn't forget about your question. Rose says, please put all of this in a book. Oh, thank you for that encouragement, Rose. I really appreciate that. I should. Right now, I'm writing a book that's I'm very excited about. Oh my gosh. Hi, Joe. I have not forgotten about your question, and I want to address it. I want to go deeper into it because I think it's like a little bit off of our main topic, right? But it's important. So follow up with it. Don't let me forget. We'll cover it in Q&A or sooner. Okay. Stephanie, if they are in the separation chamber, would that be why they don't come through via a medium? That's a great question. So it could be, but for somebody like me, I'm able to see that they're in a separation chamber. So I can still get that information for you. Will they be able to talk to me? No. A lot of times, if they're in that separation chamber, they won't be allowed to talk. In fact, they won't be allowed to even know that I'm trying to connect because they're just in a healing chamber or a separation chamber with no external stimuli. Okay. But I always consider myself an advocate for my clients. And so when that happens, I say, okay, well, let's connect with the person's guardian angels. Like, let's get any other information that we can get. I can still look and see what's going on, even if the person isn't going to talk to me directly, if they're not able to, right? Zahira is saying, if I get a vision of someone, do they also see me? There's two ways that you can have a vision of someone. The first way is that they are the first way is that their spirit is actually showing up in your room. Okay. It's actually showing up in front of you. And in that case, yes, they can see you because they are present. But the other way that you might see a vision is it's more of like an after image, an after effect of past energy. So if someone lived in a house for 50 years and their energetic imprint was very much in that house, then it's like there are times when people will actually see that person in the house, but the person's spirit is actually on the other side. But it's more like an after image, like leftover energy that's in the home. So if that's the case, then that soul isn't actually there. I think the instances that you're talking about, Zahira, are when you've actually seen a loved one that's actually appearing to you. But I wanted to describe the other thing because I was listening to a radio show yesterday and they were talking about how they were living in the house that they had grown up in and that their mom had lived in for many, many, many years. And they would see images of her like walking kind of mindlessly from the kitchen to the living room or like doing the dishes. And it was like an after energy kind of thing. All right, we are all done. I need to scoot because we have our Zoom discussion group going on tonight. And that's one of my temporary programs. It's a paid program. But if you want to go deeper, I do encourage you to check out my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Under the events tab, take a look at Spiritual Empowerment Academy. That is open for enrollment, and the price is actually going up at the end of the year. So if you've been thinking about joining, then now is the time, because how I do it is when you join, you get grandfathered in for as long as you want to be in the program. You get that same price, even if I raise the price like for future people a whole bunch, you still get grandfathered in. In fact, some of you got grandfathered in a long time ago and you have like an amazing price for such an amazing program. And I love grandfathering people in. So get grandfathered in. Speaking of loved ones, grandfathers, grandmothers, get grandfathered in so that you can lock in the lower price. And all right, I'm pretty sure I know what we're going to talk about in next month's class, but you can always send me your requests. Let me know what you want to talk about next time. Thanks, everybody. Sending you all my love. Until next time. Bye.